If I were to give you a $10 bill and tell you to go buy a roll of film, what would you get? Finding film for less than $10 a roll right now can be a bit of a challenge, but if you look far enough, there are actually some really compelling options for less than $10 per roll. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you 4 of my absolute favorite black and white films for less than $10 each. Plus, I asked you guys to send me some questions in the community a couple of weeks ago, and I am going to go through those today and answer those as well, which I thought would be kind of fun to do. So let's get started. Honestly, you can't mention budget film stocks literally anywhere without Fomapan coming up. Now, Fomapan is technically a line of film stocks that has a 100, 200, and 400 speed variant within that lineup. I'm going to be talking about the 100 because that's the one that is generally the least expensive and the one that I have the most experience with. Fomapan 100 is a really lovely, contrasty, sort of gritty, black and white negative film with classic grain and a really sort of old-fashioned and nostalgic look to it that reminds me a little bit of Kodak Tri-X sometimes when I'm shooting it. It definitely has an old school feeling. One of the drawbacks of that is a bit of an increased amount of halation in your images. It seems to be that Fomapan's anti-halation layer on the film isn't as strong as maybe that of some of its competitors. But one of the really fantastic perks of this film stock is its exposure latitude. You can expose this film a couple of stops under, like 2 stops under or 2 stops over, and still walk away with really, really good images without needing to adjust your development at all. In some cases, you won't even be able to tell the difference between an image that's 1 stop underexposed or overexposed versus one that's perfectly exposed. Now, generally, you can find this film for less than $7 US per roll, and it's often in stock pretty much everywhere that sells film, which is absolutely fantastic. This is a film that I can recommend to just about any type of photographer at any skill level, so definitely worth checking out. Plus, if you want a format other than 35mm, which is what I'm going to be primarily focusing on in this video because that's what I mostly shoot, Fomapan is also available in 120 as well as in different sizes of sheet film. So now on to the very first question that I'm gonna answer, part of the Q&A section of this video. You have to bear with me. I've never done this before. It kind of still blows me away that enough of you guys even care about this channel to ask questions, but here goes the first one. You can only pick one person. What photographer has the greatest impact on your photography journey, and what photographer's work do you find yourself going back and combing through time and time again? Okay. That's hard, because there are a number of really, really talented photographers whose work I really, really admire and go back and look at. And I feel like if I started listing them now, like, oh, this one and this one, I'd be cheating. So I'm going to try to pick just one. I'm going to go with Alan Schaller, the British photographer. He's a street photographer. He does exclusively black and white work, and I really like the way that he does it. I like the style that he brings to his pictures, and I often find myself looking back through his photography, and I've definitely been inspired by his work and his use of light and shadow in some of his photos, and try to imitate it a little bit with my photography. Never ever come anywhere close to his work, which is absolutely fantastic, but that's who I'm going to pick. So the next budget film that I want to talk about is Agfa APX, the 100 and the 400. I'm going to talk about them both at the same time because they're so incredibly similar. This is a really good value film stock that delivers really nice tonality and smooth grain on both the 100 and 400 speed versions with fairly good sharpness and clarity as well. It's not as contrasty as Fomapan, and it has a little bit less of a unique character. It's a little bit more subtle in its characteristics. But this is definitely the film stock that I would recommend the most to beginner photographers. And the manufacturing behind this film is also very, very high quality because it is made by Harman Technologies, the same people who make the Ilford and the Kentmere films. Now, some people have argued that the Agfa APX films are actually Kentmere 100 and 400 repackaged. As far as I can figure out, that is not true. They have slightly different grain characteristics, and the Apex films are based off of an older Agfa recipe that that Harman has updated and has been manufacturing under license. Now, both of these film stocks are available usually for between $5 and $7 per roll, making them a really, really good value. And they do have a bit of a drawback. They're only available in 35mm format, which is kind of disappointing for all of you medium format shooters out there. But for anyone who wants to shoot 35mm film and wants a film with really nice, smooth tonality and good characteristics, that is a solid choice for beginners and for any style of photography. Agfa APX 100 and 400 are really fantastic, good choices. So the next film that I want to talk about is Berger Punkro 400, which is a 400 speed film stock from the company Berger, who mostly makes paper and chemistry and other photo-related supplies like that, but they do also manufacture this one film stock. And this film, I really see it as an alternative to a film stock like Ilford HP5. HP5 Plus is maybe not the world's most expensive film, but it's starting to cross the $10, $12 per roll margin there, so it's not really the world's cheapest film anymore. Berger Punkro 400 seriously undercuts that film, and it performs basically the way I would expect a 400 speed classic grain negative film to perform, with medium-sized grain, decent sharpness, and really good tonality. It handles highlights quite well as really, really solid pushability. This is a film stock that I would recommend for, general use type photography, but also maybe some more dedicated things like landscape photography or portraiture or something like that. This film has really neutral characteristics. I'd kind of describe it as not too much but not too little when it comes to the sort of look of the images coming off this film stock, which I think is just absolutely perfect. And for around $8 per roll, it's also a pretty good deal. All right, on to the next question for this sort of Q&A type thing that I'm trying out here. If you can only take one lens on vacation with your Nikon FM, what would it be and why? Actually, that's easy. I don't have to think about that one at all. Hang on. Let me put that down. This one, which is the... What is this? This is 35mm. This is the Nikkor S. The Nikkor S, the pre-AI 35mm lens. It's an f2 aperture. This is a really, really fantastic lens. Actually, the optical formula of this is similar, if not completely identical, maybe except for the coatings, to later versions of the f-mount AI and the AIS versions of the 35mm lens. But this is the one that I would take with me. If I can only take one lens, 35mm is just the perfect focal length for me. Some people love it, some people hate it. I absolutely am a 35mm person. I can get close enough to any subject that I want to get close enough. It's not too warpy. I can definitely still use it for portraits, but it's also wide enough that I can use it for, more landscape type shots. But it also has a nice enough minimum focusing distance and enough sort of reach that I can also get into some fine details without having any issues. And this lens performs absolutely fantastically. It's really nice and sharp. Not quite so sharp wide open, but once you start to stop down, this lens really performs incredibly well. The contrast on this lens is also absolutely fantastic, and I love using it. It's a really, really well-made lens. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not a Nikkor S, it's a Nikkor O. The Nikkor O Auto 1.2f 35mm lens. That's the one I'd pick. Leave that there. All right, one more film stock that I want to talk about today, and that is Rollei Retro 80S. I made a video about this way back when I started the channel, and I said it was the highest resolution film stock that I've ever seen. This is still absolutely one of my absolute favorite film stocks. Now, this is a film that I would recommend to more advanced photographers. It's a little bit more difficult to work with, and unlike the other three film stocks that I've mentioned in this video so far, it's not maybe so general purpose either. Maybe a little bit more of a specialized and unique film stock. That is a bit of a beast to expose, highlights highlights and shadows can lose detail pretty quickly. But if you can nail this film stock and you can get the exposure just right, this film delivers really, really beautiful, fantastic images with unbelievably high sharpness and fantastic resolution and clarity. Plus, this film has an increased red sensitivity. It's technically a super panchromatic film stock, which can make some really interesting results when it comes to portraiture, render skin tones with a bit of increased tonality, and it can be fun to play around with filters as well. Now, this film stock is usually available for between $5 to $8 per roll, making it a pretty good deal as well, and one of the most unique film stocks on the market, and definitely the most characterful and unique one of the ones that I've mentioned in this video so far. All right, last question that I'm going to mention in this video is a bit of an odd one. I don't know how to answer this. How do you remove the back from a Pentax Spotmatic or K1000? So I own a Pentax Spotmatic, and I've owned a K1000. I had one in 2020 for a while, a couple of years. I got it in 2020, and it was really, really fantastic camera. But I never took the back off of it. I've done some minor camera repairs, but I've never really disassembled a camera before. You know what? I have no idea how to take the back off of a Pentax Spotmatic or Pentax K1000. I assume you do it the same way on both because they're very, very similar, but that's just an ignorant assumption. I don't really know. Sorry. So those are 4 of my absolute favorite black and white film stocks. They're my favorites not just because of how inexpensive they are, but also because of how well they perform and how much fun they are to use, and because I really enjoy the images that come off of each and every single one, especially Rolei Retro ADS. If you can nail the exposure on that, those images are just absolutely phenomenal. And they're all very reasonably priced, so if you want to try a budget film stock that is not as expensive as maybe some of the others that are on the market, definitely go and try them yourself, or maybe you already have and you can tell me what you thought of them down in the comments, or maybe you have a budget film stock that you really like to use that I haven't mentioned here. You can mention that for other viewers of this channel down below as well. One final note, as I was putting together sort of the background information and my notes for this video to assemble the film stocks for you guys, I realized I had never tried the Kentmere films, the ones that are made by Harman, the same people that make Ilford, and they tend to be generally very, very well received. Kentmere 100 and 400 are often recommended as a sort of budget film stock, and they are often among the least expensive films that you can buy and are generally very readily available. So I've put those on my list to try next. I have very high hopes for these films, and I'm absolutely looking forward to giving these a shot. And I felt like I couldn't mention budget film stocks without mentioning Kentmere. I haven't tried them yet. That's coming next. Thank you so much for staying to the end of this video. I really appreciate you guys. Please like this video if you think I've deserved it. Subscribe if you think I've earned it, and I will see you next time.